By heaven, said Arianrod, thou art a wicked man. Many a youth might have lost his life through the uproar thou hast caused in this cantref today. Now will I lay a destiny upon this youth, she said, that he shall never have a wife of the race that now inhabits this earth. Welcome one and all. This is the Succubus Scholar, the channel that delves into all things incubi and succubi related, where we bring to light historical texts that reveal their mysterious world to us. Today, we shall be exploring the mysterious lands of mist that the Romans feared to tread upon, Britain, or more specifically today, Wales. As a lover of Celtic mythology and as a resident of what was once the Domnonii, it always pains me how very little we know about the ancient Britons who once called this land home, with the majority of our knowledge coming from the Romans who would invade, although so much superstition and mythology surrounded these lands that Roman scholars at the time of Julius Caesar argued that such a land does not exist, consigning it to superstitious fairy tales. This is why the Mabinigion is so important. It provides a fantastic tale of magic, political intrigue and disputes that likely made up these times, as well as revealing a structure of provinces with their own chieftains which were in turn overseen by a high king. In this instance, the king is Mabinigion, king of Blodeuwedd, who had proficient skill in spellcraft, as we shall see. Believed to originate as tales transferred orally, they first emerged in written form in the Red Book of Hagest, named for the colour of the leather binding. Believed to have been written in 1382, it passed from owner to owner before falling into the hands of the Jesus College of Oxford in 1701. Another manuscript believed to have been written around the same time is the White Book of Blodeuwedd. The first translated copy, available in both Welsh and English, would be provided by the Lady Charlotte Guest during the 1800s. Whilst the tales are likely pre-Christian, like most of the Celtic tales committed to parchment by monks in their secluded abbeys, the taint of Christianity is evident, with the heroes thanking God for their fortunes and victories, rather than the little-known deities of those times. Of course, you may be wondering, listener, particularly if you are familiar with the tale, how this is related to the incubi or succubi. Well, for that, listener, I would highlight the quote at the start of this video and present to you a theory of my own after relating the tale in my own abbreviated form. A form which will be of three minor parts: Gwydion's tale, Arianrod's tale, and finally Blodeuwedd's tale, each leading into the other and necessary to give a decent picture of what led up to the event. But before I start, I must beg your forgiveness. I do not speak Welsh, and whilst I have done my best to research the pronunciations, I have no doubt there are perfectionists who will wince at my attempts, and no doubt already have. Also, for you source enthusiasts, my main reference are two copies, the first translated by the gifted Lady Charlotte Guest, and the later version by Gwyn and Thomas Jones. With that out of the way, let us begin. Something ailed his brother. Gwydion could tell from the way his hue and countenance had changed. Eventually he approached Gilvayafi, and, after some coaxing, got his brother to speak on the matter. "Thou knowest," he said, "that Math, the son of Mabinigion, has this property, that if men whisper together, in a tone how low soever, if the wind meet it, it becomes known unto him. Yes, said Gwydion, hold now thy peace, I know thy intent. Thou lovest Gawain. Gawain, the beautiful maiden belonging to King Math himself, given to alleviate the curse that had been placed upon him, that he would die during times of peace, unless he rested his feet in the lap of a maiden. Gawain was seen as the fairest of all, and many an eye watched her with yearning. Sharp of mind and holding his brother dear, Gwydion formulated a plan that would see his brother sate his desire. It would begin with the two approaching the king, and Gwydion revealing intel he had received regarding the men of the south, that Pryderi, the son of Poel, had been gifted from Aron, the king of Anra, beasts that had never been seen upon these lands before, beasts whose flesh is more succulent than oxen, small beasts that were referred to as pigs or swine. When his lord sought counsel on how he may attain these unusual creatures for his own, Gwydion stated that he and 12 others would enter the southern kingdoms and approach the king in the guise of bards. So this they did, entering the castle at Mabinigion, where they were welcomed with open arms. There Gwydion did regale them with tales and play the role of bard excellently. Seeing how entertained the king was, Gwydion then approached the king about exchanging the swine, which was refused, for Pryderi intended to multiply them before trading to anyone. So Gwydion countered, promising that on the morrow he would offer an exchange that would more than compensate the loss of this strange new cattle. Bards were revered figures in Celtic mythology, for it was believed there was power in words, and if one treated a bard poorly, he could use his gift with words to lay a curse or geas or tinfed upon the place that offended him. So it is no wonder that one clearly as gifted as Gwydion would have experience in casting illusions. So he conjured 12 stallions and 12 greyhounds, bedecked in gold collars and bridles. This he presented to the impressed king the next morning, who willingly agreed to the exchange. Of course, Gwydion and his troop took the swine and travelled back with haste, for exactly 1 day after the illusion would fade, at which point the enraged king of the south would raise arms and give chase. Gwydion would make it back to his own king, who would sally out and meet the men of the south in battle. Much blood was spilled over Gwydion's deception, but it became clear the men of the north would triumph. Eventually it was agreed to settle the matter via single combat, Pryderi against Gwydion. From this duel, the beloved King Pryderi would fall, his body brought back by his lamenting men as Math and his people celebrated. But deception is perhaps Gwydion's greatest talent, layering deception upon deception to achieve his ends. Whilst Math and he had sallied out to war, Gylfaethwy had remained, and, with opportunity now arisen, he forced himself upon Gawain. Returning home, Gawain would reveal this, distraught she could no longer help prevent the curse that plagued Math so. Instead of discarding her, as those of more callous mind might have, Math instead took her to wife and saw her amply compensated. Gwydion and Gylfaethwy, Math would turn into fawns, exiled to live in the wilds for a year, before being turned into wild hogs for another year, then wolves for another year after that. Gylfaethwy bringing a child with him each time, that Math would then make human and raise in his kingdom. Only after the 3rd year would they be forgiven and accepted back into the court. But of course there was the other matter. Math would die unless he brought suffering upon his people with war, or found a new maiden to act as his footrest. Perhaps seeking to reclaim prestige for their family, the two brothers would recommend their sister, Arianrod. And they brought her unto him, and the maiden came in. Ha, damsel, said he, art thou the maiden? I know not, lord, other than that I am. Then he took up his magic wand and bent it. Step over this, said he, and I shall know if thou art the maiden. Then stepped she over the magic wand, and there appeared forthwith a fine chubby yellow-haired boy, and at the crying out of the boy, she went towards the door. And thereupon some small form was seen, but before anyone could get a second glimpse of it, Gwydion had taken it, and had flung a scarf of velvet around it and hidden it. Now the place where he hid it was the bottom of a chest at the foot of his bed. It was a humiliation the Lady Anarod would never forget nor forgive. Her lack of virginity revealed to all. She would live embittered and shamed for thereon. Gwydion would one day awaken to the sound of an infant wailing. Looking in the chest, he found the little form had grown and would continue to grow remarkably quickly. He would raise the boy as his own from there on, and when the boy came of age, Gwydion knew it was her mother that must bequeath the boy a name. He brought the lad to her castle and revealed the boy's lineage in the court. But if Gwydion expected a tearful reunion, he was much disappointed. Anarod saw only an incarnation of her humiliation at the hands of men. She demanded his name, but when Gwydion revealed he had yet to be given one, Anarod saw the chance to lash out at the epitome of her shame. "Well," she said, "I lay this destiny upon him, that he shall never have a name until he receives one from me." Fuming, Gwydion left the castle, boy in tow. But as we have seen, he is not one to back down, and deception is his greatest gift. Disguising himself and the boy as cordwainers or shoemakers, they pretended to work their trade in the port by Anrod's castle. Espying them, she sought to purchase their wares, Gwydion drawing her closer on the pretence of measuring her feet. As she did so, the boy raised a bow and planted an arrow in the wren sitting on the boat they were on. Delighted at this show of skill, Anrod referred to the youth as the fair-haired one with the skillful hand. With this, Gwydion cast aside their guises. "Heaven reward thee not, but now has he got a name, and a good enough name it is. Cluclog Gifts, be he called henceforth." Furious, Anrod conceded a deception, but not her spite. "Well," said she, "I will lay a destiny upon this boy, that he shall never have arms and armour until I invest him with them." "By heaven," said he, "let thy malice be what it may, he shall have arms." As she grew and his yearning to bear arms and ride upon a horse grew evident, Gwydion used his incredible mind to lay out another plan. Bringing back his guise as a bard, the two entered Anrod's castle and were welcomed to a feast, where Gwydion regaled them all with tales. But alas, their timing was unfortunate, for at this moment trumpets in the distance resounded. Startled, all rose to see an enemy force advancing and encircling the castle. In disarray, Anrod sought the experienced bard's counsel, to which he advised the castle be closed up in expectation of a siege, and to arm all men in preparation. Grateful for his aid, Anrod herself gifted armaments to the two visitors for the coming battle. As soon as she gifted arms to Clu, of course, the illusion was dispelled, and Anrod, aghast when she saw it had all been a trick by her brother, was enraged. She placed a final curse upon her unwanted son, that he shall never wed any woman of this world. "Verily," said he, "thou wast ever a malicious woman, and no one ought to support thee. A wife shall he have notwithstanding." They went thereupon unto Math, the son of Mafanwe, and complained unto him most bitterly of Anrod. Gwydion showed him also how he had procured arms for the youth. "Well," said Math, "we will seek, I vow, by charms and illusion, to form a wife for him out of flowers. He has now come to man's stature, and he is the comeliest youth that was ever beheld." So they took the blossoms of the oak, and the blossoms of the broom, and the blossoms of the meadowsweet, and produced from them a maiden, the fairest and most graceful maiden that man ever saw. And they baptized her, and gave her the name Blodeuwedd. With his incredible arcane skills, Math had conjured forth a woman of unearthly beauty to wed Clu, During the celebrations, Math bestowed the cantref of Dunedin. From there, in the castle at Muir Castel, did Clw and Blodeuwedd reign. One day, Clw left for Caer de Fe to visit Math. During his absence, a horn resounded and Blodeuwedd espied a stag fleeing by, with dogs and huntsmen in pursuit. Intrigued, Blodeuwedd had one of her handmaidens send a youth to identify the host of this party. It would be revealed as Gonapebir, Lord of Penling. The party caught and slew the stag by the river's Sin Vale, where they spent the rest of the day flaying or amusing themselves with baiting the hounds. As night drew in, they approached the castle, at which Blodeuwedd readily agreed to receive them, knowing it would be considered ill-mannered to turn them away. When they came to the feasting hall, Blodeuwedd set her eyes upon Gronna, and he upon her. They were at once in love. Such was the force of this love that neither could conceal it, Gronna declaring as much that evening, and Blodeuwedd reacting in joy. They would spend that night together in one another's company. Then the day after that, and the day after that. But at last with sadness, Gronna rose to leave, lest Clw should return. Blodeuwedd let him go, but not without promising to discover the means by which the mighty Clw may be slain. That night, Clw Clorgeus returned home, and the day they spent in discourse and minstrelsy and feasting. And at night they went to rest, and he spoke to Blodeuwedd once, and he spoke to her a second time, but for all this, he could not get from her one word. "What aileth thee?" he said. "Art thou well?" "I was thinking," she said, "of that which thou didst never think of concerning me, for I was sorrowful as to thy death, lest thou shouldst go sooner than I." "Heaven reward thy care for me," said he, "but until heaven take me, I shall not easily be slain. For the sake of heaven and for mine, show me how thou mightest be slain. My memory in guarding is better than thine." "I will tell thee gladly," said he. "Not easily can I be slain except by a wound, and the spear wherewith I am struck must be a year in the forming, and nothing must be done towards it except during the sacrifice on Sundays." "Is this certain?" asked she. "It is in truth," he answered, "and I cannot be slain within a house, nor without. I cannot be slain on horseback, nor on foot." "Verily," said she, "in what manner then canst thou be slain?" "I will tell thee," said he, "by making a bath for me by the side of a river, and by putting a roof over the cauldron, and fashioning it well and tightly, and bringing a buck, and putting it beside the cauldron. Then if I place one foot on the buck's back, and the other on the edge of the cauldron, whosoever strikes me thus will cause my death." "Well," said she, "I thank heaven that it will be easy to avoid this." No sooner had she held this discourse than she sent to Gonapebir. Gronna toiled at making the spear, and that day 12 it was ready, and that very day he caused her to be informed thereof. "Lord," said Blodeuwedd unto Clw, "I have been thinking how it is possible that what thou didst tell me formerly can be true. Wilt thou show me in what manner thou couldst stand at once upon the edge of a cauldron and upon a buck, if I prepare a bath for thee?" "I will show thee," said he. A year had passed since first revealing his curious weakness to his wife, and in that year since he had sensed nothing but adoring love from her, and felt nothing but the same in turn. So Clw felt no suspicion when she asked that he prove this with a demonstration, for he could not deny the unusually precise manner of it that would beg a belief to most. So to the Riverson Vale they went, where Blodeuwedd prepared for him a bath under a roof. Clw relaxed into the bath until Blodeuwedd brought forth a buck. Still sensing no danger, Clw rose from the bath, and, with impressive dexterity, put one foot upon the bath's edge, and another upon the back of the buck. Seeing this, Gronna rose from his hidden position on a nearby hill, and threw his poisoned dart, striking Clw in the side. With a cry, Clw instinctually pulled forth his arcane abilities, transforming into an eagle and fleeing from the sight. Believing the plan a success, Gronna and Blodeuwedd embraced one another, reunited at last. and together they returned to the castle, where Gronr would claim the throne as his own. Upon hearing this news, Math, and even more so Gwydion, was much aggrieved. Every day they anxiously waited to hear news of the missing clue, but none came. Then, one day, as the swineherds Gwydion went to great pains to introduce were brought in, he noticed one amongst them separated from the rest every day and disappeared into the wilds. Curious, Gwydion rose early when they were let out and followed that swine up a river toward a brook, where it ceased beneath a tree and began feasting upon the large pile of dead rodents and small birds there. Looking up, Gwydion saw an eagle. It shook, and from it an impressive number of dead prey fell from it. Seeing the warrior's heart in the eagle, Gwydion sent Clw, and used an Engling, a Welsh Cornish form of poem, to charm it down. Oak that grows between the two banks, darkened is the sky and hill. Shall I not tell him by his wounds that this is Clw? Upon this, the eagle came down until he reached the centre of the tree, and Gwydion sang another Engling. Oak that grows in upland ground, is it not wetted by the rain? Has it not been drenched by 90 tempests? It bears in its branches Clwchor gifts. Then the eagle came down until he was on the lowest branch of the tree, and thereupon this Engling did Gwydion sing. Oak that grows beneath the steep, stately and majestic is its aspect. Shall I not speak it, that Clw will come to my lap? And the eagle came down upon Gwydion's knee, and Gwydion struck him with his magic wand so that he returned to his own form. No one ever saw a more piteous sight, for he was nothing but skin and bone. Joyous at finding the nephew he had raised as a son, and horrified at his emaciated state, Gwydion dragged Clw back to the Caer de Phil, where Math had his best physicians attend to the capitulated lord. The wounds were grievous and slow to heal, but heal they did, and in a year he made a full recovery. And of course with this, retribution was upon his mind. Together they brought forth all the might of Gwynedd and marched upon Mercastel to gain justice for Clw. And when Blodeuwedd heard that he was coming, she took her maidens with her and fled to the mountain. And they passed through the river Vale and went towards the court that there was upon the mountain. And through fear they could not proceed except with their faces looking backwards, so that unawares they fell into the lake. And they were all drowned except Blodeuwedd herself. And her Gwydion overtook, and he said unto her, I will not slay thee, but I will do unto thee worse than that. For I will turn thee into a bird, and because of the shame thou hast done to Clwchor gifts, thou shalt never show thy face in the light of day henceforth, and that through fear of all the other birds. For it shall be their nature to attack thee, and to chase thee from wheresoever they may find thee. And thou shalt not lose thy name, but shalt be always called Blodeuwedd. Now Blodeuwedd is an owl in the language of this present time, and for this reason is the owl hateful unto all birds, and even now the owl is called Blodeuwedd. Gronr retreated back to Penllyn, and sent forth embassies to sue for peace, but there was only one offer Clw would agree to. Gronr was to return to the river, and in the same spot where he wounded Clw, Gronr would stand, as Clw threw his own dart at him. After much debate, Gronr reluctantly agreed to this. Perhaps knowing he would not be as fortunate as Clw, and knowing of his famed strength, Gronr asked that, as he had been led astray by the wiles of a woman, that he be permitted to place a stone between himself and the dart, to which Clw agreed. But the stone would make no difference. Clw bore inhuman strength and held the dart straight through the rock, and straight through Gronr, killing him at once. With justice done, Clw would return to his castle, triumphant, and rule over his land once again. The rock that Clw supposedly threw the dart through is known as the Slate of Gronr, and can still be seen to this day. The lake where Blodeuwedd's handmaidens drowned is known today as the Lake of the Maidens, or Mabinigion. If you go to these sites now, listener, and focus, you can get a feel of the myth and magic that surrounded the land in these times. Should you ever be hiking in this region of North Wales, and hear the call of an owl in the night, then be aware that Blodeuwedd, forever trapped in her owl form, perhaps awaiting her Grunner to release the curse upon her, might be nearby. I hope you share the same enthusiasm, listener, when I say I absolutely love this tale. It's amazing to think that a story that was passed down orally for centuries before being immortalised via ink to parchment would reach us all the way to this day and still, in my opinion, be able to stand toe to toe to some of the more famous modern fantasy stories of today. Indeed, more than one person theorises that Tolkien took inspiration from the Welsh and Irish tales. Indeed, one need only look into the Dofedi Danan of Irish legend to see the similarities. But in what way does this relate to succubi mythology? Well, listener, I ask you to hear me out fully before judging, but I would argue that Blodeuwedd is an early example of druids conjuring a spirit lover, often incubi, succubi in origin. Not only that, but an example of conjuring an astral lover via the golem technique, albeit with flowers and illusion rather than clay. In Jewish mythology, a golem was an animated form made from clay or mud. Indeed, some argued Adam was the first golem, having been fashioned so in some tales. It was believed that if one conducted an ecstatic ritual and wrote a Shem, one of the names of God, upon a parchment, then inserted it into the mouth of the statue or doll, that it would become animated. Perhaps the most famous tale of this being the Golem of Charm. The Rabbi Elijah wrote Emet, the Hebrew word for truth, upon parchment to create his own golem. But it began to grow to such a size that he feared for people's safety. So he removed the first letter to create Met, or death, thus causing the golem to fall apart, crushing the rabbi as it did so. After saying certain prayers and observing certain fast days, the Polish Jews make the figure of a man from clay or mud, and when they pronounce the miraculous Shemhamferus, the name of God, over him, he must come to life. He cannot speak, but he understands fairly well what is said or commanded. They call him Gollum and use him as a servant to do all sorts of housework. But he must never leave the house. On his forehead is written Emeth, truth. Every day he gains weight and becomes somewhat larger and stronger than all the others in the house, regardless of how little he was to begin with. For fear of him, they therefore erase the first letter, so that nothing remains but Meth, he is dead, whereupon he collapses and turns to clay again. But one man's golem once grew so tall, and he heedlessly let him keep on growing so long, that he could no longer reach his forehead. In terror, he ordered the servant to take off his boots, thinking that when he bent down he could reach his forehead. So it happened, and the first letter was successfully erased. But the whole heap of clay fell on the Jew and crushed him. There are many debates about whether these golems can be considered human, but what is most tantalising for us is that when these dolls or statues are made, and the Shem entered, they become animate because a spirit enters these vessels, spirits from another realm. Perhaps you are seeing where I'm leading you now. Math and Gwydion built a vessel using flowers and charms, a flower golem. I believe this is an echo of this method, and that it can be argued that a spirit of Succubus Lilith origin entered it, to become Blodeuwedd. Succubi incubi doing this is not unheard of. Indeed, it is said that Lilith and Samael themselves entered idols from which they spoke to the masses. The prolific Jewish scholar Gershom Scholem highlights this. In Rayamahemna 3:277b, we are told that the generation that built the Tower of Babel fashioned idols. Samael and Lilith entered into these idols and spoke from them, and so became gods. In Tikkun number 66 of the Tikkun Zohar, it is said, however, that they had put the Shem Hamfarash into the mouths of these images, whereupon they began to speak. This was the logic to many in ancient times for revering idols in temples. The deities would house themselves within them and, pleased by the display of sacrifice, bestow their blessings upon them. This, in a manner of speaking, is a smaller version of it, housing a single entity within a vessel that it may interact with the material world more directly. It could be argued that Blodeuwedd displayed succubi or at least Lilith-like traits. at least the Lilith from the alphabet of Ben Sirah, who refused to bow to Adam's dominance and instead fled. In this instance, Clue is Adam, Blodeuwedd Lilith, and Gronna the unnamed demon she fled to, who is likely Samael. This tale very much struck me as a sort of Celtic version of the Lilith origin tale. One should also not miss that Lilith bears the symbolism of the owl, due to various references throughout this time, from Lilith in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the likely mistranslation of the King James Bible, and more. I think it more than a coincidence that Blodeuwedd was turned into an owl, also as supposedly the most despised of birds. It brings to my mind the sirens in their bird-like forms that in earlier videos I've linked to Succubus from the Book of Enoch, and references in Lilith's names when combating Elijah. Of course, I am not the only one to notice this Lilith-Blodeuwedd correlation. Jean Markel's fantastic book, Women of the Celts, goes deeper by seeing Gwydion and Math as akin to the Demiurge, forming Blodeuwedd as Adam was formed in the Gnostic texts. Created for the sole purpose of wedding Clue, just as Lilith was to be a mate to Adam, she rebels against this and ultimately chooses love over duty, with the will to murder Clue if it means freeing herself from the established order she has been enslaved to. As consequence, both are exiled, banished to the night, to remain prominent to this day in the shadow of our psyche. If you will indulge me, I would also refer to a more modern work which, for those of you who have watched my other videos, has been very influential on me. My first means of contacting Lilith years ago was by following just a few parts of Donald Tyson's Liber Lilith. That and his other book, Sexual Alchemy, gives instructions on how to communicate with Lilith by setting up a shrine and making up a clay image of her with the finest materials. Only instead of a shem, as described in Jewish legend, an altogether different parchment is drawn up. On a leaf of papyrus, newly made, he draws in menstruous ink the secret and true image of Lilith herein rendered. Nor let it be papyrus from which the writing has been removed, but only a virgin sheet. He rolls it and places it inside the hollow through the aperture of the head. He closes the hole with wet clay. The image of the earth is the outer vessel of Lilith, even as Eve was formed from the clay of the earth. The image of the papyrus is the inner vessel of her spirit, even as Eve was inwardly made upon the pattern of Adam, taken by Samael from out of his side. Although a modern text, I regard it highly, particularly as the majority of the text bears its origin from actual Gnostic and Kabbalistic legend. Unlike most of today's modern grimoires that offer lukewarm spells pulled from fairy tale, I found this one to be more true to form in both occultic structure and in Lilith's character and charm. Something I still struggle with when researching this tale, and would gladly welcome any input on, is the emphasis upon the 3 flowers used to construct Blodeuwedd. Flowers of broom, meadowsweet and oak, likely the oak's catkins. With its origins, such detail is unsurprising as druids are well known for the close links to the earth, nature and the use of herbs and plants in their rituals. So I believe this would have been highlighted as they would have held some sort of meaning. But what that meaning is in terms of ancient druidic beliefs, I have found precious little. The flowers of oak, or their catkins, is somewhat unsurprising, as it is said they revered the oak tree in particular. Indeed, Pliny and other sources suggest that the term druid holds its roots in Greek or Latin origin as meaning oak wisdom or oak seer, and would hold groves of trees as sacred places. Pliny would describe the ritual of oak and mistletoe, where mistletoe, only growing on oak, would be harvested before animals were sacrificed and a broom made from the plant to instill fertility. Of course, no mistletoe is mentioned here, but perhaps the use of the oak was to instill the wisdom associated with that tree within Blodeuwedd, as well as the many other magical properties the druids no doubt associated with that tree. The meadowsweet is aptly named for its sweet flavour and scent, frequently used as a stewing herb because of this, as well as a flavouring in mead. Perhaps its sweet nature was meant to bring about such a personality in Blodeuwedd. As for broom, I struggle to find much on this. A symbol once used by the Plantagenets, it was considered a symbol of plenty, likely due to how common the plant is. As such, perhaps this was to represent the abundance and prosperity Blodeuwedd was meant to bring to her intended husband. Again, this is supposition, and my knowledge of ancient herb lore is incredibly limited. Either way, I am certain they hold some importance in the creation of a flower golem. The reasons perhaps lost to us through time, the droids having preferred oral tradition over a written one. I would add in one more curiosity for you to ponder on. The lake where Blodeuwedd's maidens drowned in. Did they truly do so? There are many legends where lakes and large bodies of sea are portals to the otherworld. Indeed, earlier Jewish legends state Lilith's kingdom is actually at the bottom of the sea rather than some other plane of reality. As a woman not of this world, thus not subject to Clue's curse, Blodeuwedd may well have come from here, and thus knew such means to return to it. Perhaps using the lake as a gateway? Sending her maidens forth, then being prevented from following after by Gwydion catching up to her. I appreciate that to some or many of you it will seem I'm stretching a bit, but I do believe many of these tales are connected and influenced by one another in some manner. I am struck by too many similarities for there not to be. But if nothing else, at least I have gifted you with a hopefully enjoyable rendition of Blodeuwedd, as well as revealing a means in which people did and still do communicate with spirits, via the golem technique. And so with that, thank you for watching. I hope you have something to take away from this. For my part, I thoroughly enjoyed making this video, as Blodeuwedd is one of my favourite legends that I have been dying to cover for some time. Hopefully I will get the chance to cover more Celtic myths with similar links. I so want to do the Morrigan, or maybe the Balm Sith, or the Lian Shi. Truly, I hope you are all well out there, and that Lilith and her children are guiding you in these, frankly, difficult times. Until next time, listener, I do hope Lilith grants you pleasant dreams.